Let's be real here for a second. How many times have you said, all right, this is it. I'm finally going to get shredded. I'm going to get a six pack, only to find yourself back at square one a few months later. You drop carbs, you cut out sugar. Maybe even you tried keto or carnivore because you heard some dude on the internet say it's the secret to getting lean and it seems pretty simple to you. And sure, maybe you drop a few pounds at first, but then what? Your energy tanks, cravings hit hard, your workouts start to suck, and before you know it, you're face first in a entire pizza thinking, well, I already screwed up. Mines will go all in. Sound pretty familiar? Or on the other side, maybe you're the guy who grinds hard Monday through Thursday, eating clean like it's your job, but then the weekend hits and suddenly beers, wings, late night, burgers erase all of your progress. And the worst part, every Monday, you swear you're going to lock in again, only to repeat that same cycle over and over. Here's the truth, it's not your discipline that's the problem, it's your approach. You keep trying these same extreme fad diets, the same all or nothing strategies, expecting a different result, and that's why you're stuck. You don't need another diet, you don't need another fad trend or something out there that is cutting out one different food group or another, or gluten free or keto or any of this. You simply need a skill set. You need a system that you can actually sustain. So, in this episode, we're going to break down why these traditional diets like keto, carnivore, other fad approaches are failing men like you. We're going to cover the science, the real reason that they work at first, but they never last, and why learning how to actually manage your nutrition is the key to getting lean, strong, and staying that way for life. So let's get right into it. Now, I've been there. I've been stuck in the cycle of quick fixes, false promises, frustration, and I'm here to tell you that I don't blame you. I wish it was all true too. I wish it was as easy as the internet makes it seem to be. We got all these supplements, these fad diets, and just because you see somebody else say that it worked for you, oftentimes there was other factors behind the scenes that led to their success, and they prop up one certain approach on the internet because that is the sexy thing to do. And we'll talk more about kind of how social media has kind of ruined a lot of this stuff in the weight loss industry. But I'm going to start off kind of going through my experience working with a bodybuilding coach in college, some things that I learned with that, and then we will dive into cutting carbs specifically. Talk about that. We'll talk about the psychological trap of a lot of these diets, the long-term consequences, and then like I said, we'll get into the real cost versus the price of some of this stuff and these false claims on social media. And hopefully, my goal is for this to kind of clear a lot of the water, give you a very clear roadmap, and be able to decipher a lot of this stuff on the internet so that you can actually understand what you need to do in order to build the actual skill around nutrition. Because at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a skill. You need to learn what to eat, not just what to cut out. Because at the end of the day, if we're only looking to cut things out, that's a pretty poor negative mindset versus if we're looking at what we should fill our life with, that is going to be a lot easier to maintain in sustainable mindset. So we'll start off with my experience working with a bodybuilding coach. So back in college, I hired a bodybuilding coach. I had kind of plans or aspirations to step on stage, which that never ended up happening. Who knows? It still might in the future. But I learned a lot from working with this coach, both on good things and bad things, what not to do. So the sort of structure that we followed, it was a set meal plan, meaning he gave me the exact amounts of each food in grams. I weighed every food out in grams, and the foods are the exact same every single day for pretty much the entire year. Only thing that changed were the amounts. So the grams of rice would change, the grams of oats would change. But for the most part, it was the exact same meals every single day. And we had one caveat. Every Saturday night, we were allowed one cheat meal. And that cheat meal had zero guidelines, zero restrictions. As long as it was within that one meal, we could eat as much as we wanted, whatever we wanted. So we took full advantage of this, let me tell you. Most nights we would eat an entire pizza. This is just me, actually. I say we because I had some roommates that were working with the same coach, but I would eat an entire pizza, 4 crumble cookies, probably some cookie dough, whatever else that I could ground up at the grocery store that looked good that week. I would almost hoard and come up with this game plan throughout the entire week just to binge so hard to the point where some of these times I am surprised that I didn't throw up. I got to the point where I felt like I was going to throw up multiple times because we were eating so much crap and so much sugar and whatnot after eating very, very clean and being in a deficit all week. And this didn't really make sense to me at first. And kind of how it was portrayed was that if you eat such an absurd amount of calories in one meal, your body can't digest and absorb it, and essentially it just goes right through you, which is definitely not the case. And this habit stuck with me for a while and essentially developed the bad habit of now, after that, whenever I was doing some sort of diet or in a fat loss phase or a cut and I went over maybe like what my calories were for the day and started to pig out on a little, or maybe I had a treat that I was already planning on eating, I would eat so much of it because I'm like, we're already over. Might as well take advantage of the moment and eat as much as we possibly can, because if the more I eat, the less my body is going to be able to absorb and store, and it'll just go right through me. So I would eat so much every single time, and it created this bad habit around binging. And now, did I get lean with this approach? 100%. Probably the leanest that I've been still year to date. I believe I started around like 198, went down to 170, and then from there we went into a bulk, and I went from 170 all the way up to 215, I believe, which is still to date probably the lightest and the heaviest I've been since high school in that sort of year and a half period. What did I necessarily learn or take away from this is the approach you take, while granted taking some of these extreme approaches will get results, you got to look in the long term as to what they are essentially teaching you. Because at this point, what we were doing wasn't a lifestyle, it was a competition. We had the bodybuilding mindset. We're watching all this bodybuilding content, following our favorite bodybuilders, and trying to live like them. That was very, very popular kind of in the fitness industry with cheat meals back then. And like I said, it wasn't a lifestyle, it was a competition. So it was a competition to see how much food we could eat in these cheat meals. And then during the week, it was a competition, obviously, to stick to the diet. Didn't want to break the plan. Part of that too was the group or the coaching thing that we were in. We were worried if we went off plan, he was going to cut us and like wouldn't work with us. We couldn't be part of his quote unquote bodybuilding team. So that was some of the drive too, to be disciplined, not eat off plan. And let me tell you, it worked in the time, but I didn't try to learn a ton in the process about actual sustainable habits. All I wanted to know was what it took to get as shredded as possible, to build as much muscle as possible. I was looking at all the supplements that could help speed things up, pro hormones, pretty much anything that you could buy at a supplement store. I had looked into it to see what negative side effects there were, would it help me lose fat faster, would it help me build muscle faster. And I could tell you at the end of the day, no supplement is going to help you lose fat faster. It comes down to being in a calorie deficit, as unsexy as that is. And as far as building muscle just comes down to protein, getting adequate protein in, getting enough carbohydrates in too to keep your muscle glycogen topped off, which we'll talk about here in a second. And creatine, that is 100% a beneficial supplement. We'll get into supplements more here in future podcasts, but that was essentially my experience, and it kind of left a salty taste in my mouth as far as the whole bodybuilding industry. So when I got into coaching myself, I really wanted to have more of an emphasis on getting people lean, but also living a lifestyle and being healthy, and not just taking such extreme approaches that are going to cause more bad habits and unhealthy kind of desires and tendencies later on down the road. So now most of you guys, when you get into wanting to lose some body fat, see the abs, first thing pretty much every guy goes to, I'm going to cut out carbs. I'm going to do keto. I'm going to do carnivore. That I see Joe Rogan talking about carnivore MD, all these guys. It's the easiest thing that gets pumped up. And the reason so many people love it and pump it up is because they're impatient. You're impatient. You expect to see success week one after starting a diet. And when you're doing a more sustainable, flexible dieting, macro-based approach, it's going to take a few weeks to start seeing the scale go down. And I think it's very important to remember too, if you just want to lose body fat, you're only going to be losing about 1, maybe 2% of your body weight a week, which for most of us is 1 to 2 pounds at most per week. That will be fat. If you're losing much more than that, a lot of it is just water weight, and some of it is probably muscle mass as well. So the reason so many people get addicted, I don't know if you want to call it addicted. It's kind of like gambling in a sense, where you go gambling for your first time, you hit it big, and you get hooked right away. You think that you're going to hit it big every single time now, and that we all know is not the case. But these people that hit it big on their first couple times have that big kind of rush of dopamine and adrenaline and think that they're going to get that every single time. And that's the same thing with these diets that cut carbs. People cut carbs, they see the scale go down 10 pounds in that first week, and they're like, holy cow, this is it. This is the secret. This is the miracle diet. This is the answer. I just lost 10 pounds in a week, and I've been trying to lose weight for months on end. Hate to break it to you, but while maybe 1 or so, maybe 2 pounds of that is muscle or is fat loss, a lot of that is simply just water weight in those first couple weeks, because every gram of carbs that you eat holds about 2 to 3 grams of water. So when we cut out carbohydrates, your body is simply dumping water through the depletion of your muscle glycogen, which glycogen is just carbs stored in your muscle. So you're losing a lot of water weight, and then if you continue that, you're probably going to lose a significant amount of muscle mass as well, because you've created such a large deficit. And you're going to look a little flatter at first because your muscle glycogen stores, which are the carbs that are stored in your muscles, are depleted. So you're going to look a little bit smaller and a little bit flatter at first. But that's why everybody gets hooked on it so quick, is because nothing will get the scale to drop as quickly as cutting carbs will, simply because of that water weight loss. So it's important to realize that carbs are not the enemy when it comes to fat loss. We have to really decipher between weight loss and fat loss. They're two totally different things. And as men, you want to be big, you want to have muscle mass, you want to look jacked. You don't just want to lose weight and look skinny fat. So it's not about weight loss, it's about fat loss. And I already said once before, if you're losing much more than 2% of your body weight per week, you're going to be losing mostly water weight and also some muscle mass with that. Now, studies have actually compared low carb diets to balanced diets, and they found that low carb diets actually don't outperform balanced diets in terms of fat loss when calories are matched. Now, keywords there. Don't outperform balanced diets for fat loss. That is not weight loss. I can't hammer down this point enough, because so many people get hung up on it. Fat loss is not equal to weight loss. Studies have shown low carb diets don't outperform balanced diets for fat loss when calories are matched. And that's from the Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition. Another downside here of these diets, such as carnivore diets, keto, and whatnot, they aren't teaching you any sort of skill. They aren't teaching you how to eat. They aren't teaching you what foods to fuel your body with, what foods are going to optimize performance in the gym, what foods are going to make you more satiated. They're simply just telling you, hey, don't eat this one thing. And by doing that, you're going to be missing out on some key nutrients. So, for example, the carnivore diet is going to lack fiber, which is mostly found in carbohydrates, helps with gut motility, gut health. Fiber is a prebiotic, meaning it's basically the food that your gut microbiome feeds on is fiber. It's also going to lack B vitamins, magnesium, potassium, leading to other gut issues, sometimes inflammation, and poor gym performance. Now you're saying, what are you talking about? Carnivore leads to higher inflammation. I'm on carnivore and I saw way less inflammation. That is not because you necessarily cut out carbs. That is likely because you cut out all the sugary ice cream and other shit you were eating. You cut out the alcohol and a lot of those other poor beverages and foods. And people attribute that to, oh, carnivore is the best thing. You can still eat a balanced diet with carbohydrates, fruits, and whatnot, and still cut out all that ice cream, cookies, fried food, alcohol, all of that. That is what is giving you less inflammation, making you feel better. It is not carnivore. Even the guy who created the carnivore diet, Paul Saladino, who used to be the carnivore MD on Instagram, and he actually changed his name to just Paul Saladino, I believe. It might be Paul Saladino MD. He got rid of carnivore diet in his name, and he actually wrote the book, I think it's the Carnivore Code. And he came out recently and said that he was noticing negative health side effects as he was writing this book. Yet he still continued to write it and put it out. And he has also stated that carnivore isn't the healthiest nutrition option or diet nowadays because it is lacking key nutrients. And he doesn't even follow it himself now. So adding things in like fruit, honey, I still think he stays away from vegetables, but carbs are not the enemy, and he has even came out to say that. This is the guy that created the carnivore diet. So any diet where you need to supplement with a significant amount of vitamins and minerals is not the best diet. The best diet, you should be able to get every vitamin, mineral, fiber, every nutrient, amino acid that you need from your food. And a lot of these people preach eat just whole foods too that are on the carnivore diet and whatnot, but yet they need to take all of these vitamins and other supplements because their diet isn't sufficient enough to give that to them. So those are kind of some of the key areas where cutting out carbs, carnivore, aren't as good as they really seem to be. And I guess one more thing, actually we'll talk about that here when we get to long-term consequences, but next we can talk about like the psychological trap of these diets, sort of like the gambling industry. So people see that big drop in the scale, they get hooked to them, and then they see that the scales go down, they lose 10 pounds, they come off the carnivore diet, and they reward themselves by eating a bunch of junk food, eating pizza, eating all these things that they couldn't have because, oh, well, I just lost 10 pounds, so I deserve a reward, so I'm going to use food to reward myself. Then that scale goes right back up. They put on even more body fat than they had before they started, and they get into this continuous cycle. I see this with a lot of guys, especially. I've even been somebody who is kind of fallen victim to this at one point, and it's a dangerous cycle to get into. The first thing is not taking an extreme approach so that you're in this cycle, and actually pushing it out towards the long term. But the second thing is, food is not a reward. Using food for a reward is part of what has kept you in this negative cycle with never being able to see consistent progress, continuously going back to one extreme approach, rewarding yourself, putting on more weight, going back to another extreme approach, which is actually learning the skills of how to eat. So these extreme diets can be a very powerful psychological trap. And then two, I often see that the people that choose these diets continue to bounce from one diet to another, to another, to another. And that is the definition of an insanity. Keep doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. If you've done keto, carnivore, how do you think that another one of these fad diets that just focuses on eliminating one food group is going to be your answer? You've already failed with multiple of them. You need to actually learn the skill. So quit being insane and jumping from one fad diet to the next. Realize that if one didn't work for you, the second isn't going to work for you. And just because somebody, your uncle Bob, or somebody on Instagram said that was the answer for them, doesn't mean that was actually what they were doing. They could have been doing something completely different behind the scenes. They probably were in a whole lot different starting point than you. Their maintenance level of calories is different, or what they were eating before was way different than you. Like if you're already not eating a lot of carbohydrates, this might not even put you into a calorie deficit by cutting out carbs. Maybe you're way overeating on fat and you aren't really eating a whole lot of carbs. So maybe you need to go more towards cutting your fat intake back. But once again, if you never track your food, you have no idea what the macro composition of your food is. You don't know where you should be making those improvements or adjustments. So now looking at the long-term consequences of these sorts of diets and dieting methods, the first one is metabolic adaptation. Now, I say long-term consequences of these, but metabolic adaptation can happen with any diet. It happens when you're tracking macros. It happens with any of these. However, the difference is what happens once that occurs. So what is metabolic adaptation? You'll sometimes hear people refer to this as starvation mode, but starvation mode actually isn't a real thing. And there was a study, I believe it was the Minnesota starvation study. You can look this up, where they put people in a 55% calorie deficit from their maintenance to see if the point, because starvation mode is essentially where people diet and then they hit a plateau and then they start to gain weight and they think, oh, their body's gone into starvation mode. That's not the case, because this study looked at that, put people in a 55% calorie deficit, and they continued to lose weight. And once again, I say weight, these people were very, very unhealthy, and some of the photos are kind of a bit scary, and I guarantee you if they try to do this study nowadays, it would not get past an ethics board. But that just shows that you're going to continue to lose weight as long as you're in a big enough calorie deficit, no matter what. So you create a calorie deficit, and then over time, as you lose weight, you are going to, one, expend less calories throughout the day because you weigh less. So naturally, your body needs less calories to move less weight around. When you're in a deficit, your body is going to kind of cut back on unnecessary movement. So like if you're a big fidgeter and you're deep into a diet, you might notice that you stop fidgeting. You're going to have less of a desire to go out and walk and do a lot of these other movements throughout the day. So that is essentially your body downregulates calorie expenditure to sort of match the amount of calories that are coming in. And that is where you see that weight loss plateau happen. So when you're doing these diets that only have one rule, you cut back or you cut out carbs completely, you're at that new calorie level. Eventually your body is going to adapt to that new calorie level, and then you hit that plateau. What happens there? You only have one rule with your diet to follow, so you won't be able to make any more adjustments. And a lot of times people get frustrated and they just give up on the diet completely, go back to how they were eating before, they put all the weight back on and then some. Versus if we're actually learning how to eat as a skill set and we're tracking our macros, we create that first deficit by lowering fats and carbs a little bit. Our body adapts to that deficit. Once that happens, we can lower carbs and fats a little bit more. And we are in a lot more control and are actually managing that deficit to make it a continuously steady progress to make sure that we're continuously losing weight. And then once we get to a point where the calories are pretty low, our fat's kind of at that minimum that we want to bring fat to in order to keep hormone health and everything else at that healthy state, then we can slowly work those calories back up in a progressive manner so that we're not putting all of that weight and fat back on that we initially lost. So that is the biggest difference between these two dieting methods. Is one, you're in control, you can make multiple adjustments. The other, there's one big adjustment that happens with the one rule. Once your body adapts to that change, then people go right back to how they were eating before. They don't know how to get out of it, and they put all of that weight back on. So that is essentially the long-term consequences, metabolic adaptation, why people are continuously in this yo-yo dieting cycle. And the fat loss industry is essentially hijacking your progress. That's how I like to put it. As with all these extreme approaches, like I just said, it keeps you in that loop, never getting real sustainable results, because this is such a large industry. I believe it was something like, let's see, I think I had the numbers somewhere in here. It was in like the 70 to 90 billions of dollars per year spent on fat loss and weight loss medications, supplements, those sorts of things. So it is a massive industry. So just like the pharmaceutical industry in fixing health in that way, they don't want long-term fixes to health because then nobody's going to buy their product. But if all this other kind of nonsense keeps popping up, people keep being frustrated with these fad diets, not getting them real results. They never actually learn the skill of how to eat. They're going to keep going to these quick fixes, fat loss supplements, medications that also aren't going to get them real results. Maybe we'll talk about semaglutide and these other ones in later episodes. But it's just meant to keep you in this continuous cycle doing these fad diets because you're never actually learning this skill. So I think the biggest things to remember is, one, there's no miracle diet. You actually need to learn how to eat and how to manage your macros. And if you choose to do low carb, 100% you can do low carb, but do it while tracking your macros so that you're actively managing it and you actually are learning what to eat and how to eat. Don't just make blanket rules where you're still just guessing at the end of the day as far as your calorie expenditure and intake goes. The second thing, there's no supplement, at least at this point of time, or medication that is going to get you to lose body fat. And if you don't acquire the skills to do that in the long term, even if we did have a supplement or you got surgery or liposuction to remove all of your body fat, if you don't acquire the skills, the habits, the discipline, the systems needed to get it off, one, you're not going to appreciate the progress and you're not going to transform as a human, which that's a lot of it too. Aside from just the fat loss, the mental transformation that comes from you being in control, going through and putting in the work to transform your body, that transforms your mind in a way that you could never imagine. But if you don't have those skills, all that fat comes off, you're just going to put it right back on because you don't know how to get it off. A lot of false claims, misinformation out there. We can go into that all day long. Maybe I'll do one where we just go through kind of myth busting all day long. But lastly, the last thing I want you to realize is the difference between price and cost. So price is the dollar amount, the number that you pay for something. Cost is the real cost of what you're actually spending, your time, your energy, your hope, the stress that comes with it, all of these things. There's a lot more than just a dollar amount that comes with this stuff. And I think that's where not trying to look for a quick fix or something that you're going to buy your way out of, and actually learning this skill, that's going to, there's only one way to do it at the end of the day. It's being in a calorie deficit, consuming enough protein. No matter what anybody says, I will fight anybody on that. Science is science. The law of thermodynamics is the law of thermodynamics. It's like you can't argue with gravity, just like you can't argue with the law of thermodynamics at the end of the day. But do it right the first time. Take the time to learn the skill. It's like learning financial skills and knowledge and how to actually invest in the stock market. There's that person versus there's the person who hit it big in the casino once and keeps going back trying to hit it big again, but is never going to hit it big again. And they're causing so much stress. They're wasting so much time. They're spending so much energy. Their hope is dwindling away and they're wasting money. That casino person versus the person that actually learned how to invest, manage their money, just like managing your macros. On the other hand, if that other person in the casino would have just took that money he won the first time and invested it into learning how to actually learn skills around managing money, that person's going to be way, way further ahead than the person that consistently struggles looking for that quick fix, bouncing from fad diet to fad diet, never ends up seeing real results. And then eventually they're like, okay, finally, I will drop my ego. I will let down the wall and I will take the time to learn the skill of nutrition. They're going to wish they would have just done that from point one, because the cost that they put up for all of that wasted time, energy, and hope that's the real tragedy. And I don't want that for anybody. It's not that I'm stuck in my way of my method is the best method. No, I want every dude out there to be successful, become lean, be lethal, be a good leader in their community, in their family. And I know, one, because I've been the guy looking for the quick fixes. Two, I've gone through the education. I've read the studies. I had college classes on nutrition. I've talked to professors. I've done it myself multiple times. And I know this is the best way and the skill around nutrition. Everything else is just a guessing game. So take the time to learn this, because at the end of the day, all these diets fail because they take the choice away from you. They don't teach you how to eat for your lifestyle, your performance, your goals. You don't need another crash diet. You need a actual system. That's why learning how to manage your nutrition with macros and flexible dieting is the only real answer. And it's not sexy, I know, but it works. And that's what matters. And that's what separates the guys who stay in shape for life versus the ones who are continuously starting over. So in future episodes, we're definitely going to break down how to build out an exact nutrition plan that works for you, how to train for fat loss, muscle building. All that will be laid out in an exact blueprint for you. So keep tuning in and we will teach you how to stay lean for life. So, like I said, I've been stuck in the trap myself. Pains me to see other guys suffering from the same shit. So I hope that each one of these episodes can open your mind, show you a new perspective, teach you something, give you some value so that you can implement that into your life. If this episode resonated with you, or you think can help a buddy of yours that is stuck in that continuous cycle of dieting, and maybe teach them why those traditional diets are going to keep on failing them, share this episode with that friend. Hit the subscribe button. Let's break free from that BS on social media, jumping from one quick fix to another. Be the guy that actually learns the skill, not the guy who keeps going back to the casino, hoping to hit it big like he did that first time and never actually seeing any progress. So I want to build a community of men who actually truly understand what it takes to be lean and lethal, so that you can go out there and be leaders in the community and help thousands of other guys do the exact same. So thanks for listening. As always, stay lean, stay lethal,